With me here on set is Andrew Smith. He's Senior Lecturer in Contemporary History and Politics at the University of Chichester in the UK. He's in Paris at the moment, so he's come in here to talk to us for once. Good to have you with us, Andrew. Let's talk first about this no confidence vote aspect. I mean, just too risky to call one, do you think?
I think that's part of it. It really is a moment where the idea of this diminished majority, this need to try and put together support and do that parliamentary arithmetic really would mean that there's just too much risk. The other potential scenario, which would have been disastrous for Macron's government, would have been the idea that there are combinations where this could only have passed, this vote of confidence, with the support of the Rassemblement National. And that would be a terrible look to have Macron's government propped up by a vote of confidence from the Rassemblement National. So instead of this vote of confidence, what we get today is, of course, essentially a vote of no confidence. We knew right from the end of the legislative elections that NUPES deputies were going to put forward this motion of censure. Sure enough, it has carried. The Socialists and the Greens decided to get on board. And so it looks like we will, this afternoon, probably about 2:30, see this vote of censure moved against the government. Unlikely to pass. It needs an absolute majority of MPs to pass, and that would collapse the government. But that is unlikely to happen. And so instead, we see a little kind of taste of the immobilism, this kind of, parliamentary difficulty to come. Yeah, exactly. It's just static.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think they're going to be able to get through that? Because it's going to be incredibly difficult, isn't it? If they've lost the majority, the French president is used to having a majority, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned, almost everyone has called one of these votes of confidence. We can look to the past, in 68, in 88, in 91, 92, I think, people didn't call a vote of confidence. And again, we can look to some of those reasons for kind of past examples. Probably most relevant is Michel Rocard in 88. And actually, that again was an idea of not having a full majority. Similar ideas of trying to, really negotiate every vote wherever you can. And I think actually what we're seeing now is this recognition of reality. There was no poaching or old pals to be had in putting together this parliament and putting together this government. And so what we've actually seen here is really an attempt to move past it. Already, we've seen some calls from the centre-right. On Sunday, there was a big editorial published by the Mayor of Toulouse and about 20 other elected officials. This morning, Christine Estrosi, of course, former LR, kind of Macron compatible, they've all been calling for a kind of constructive support of the centre-right. So there's an interesting dynamic going on. These are the kind of the realities of this parliamentary moment playing out. This tripolarisation, these warring tribes, these enemies, as Gérald Darmanin, the Interior Minister, put it, suddenly having to face each other out in Parliament to look across the Assembly. And I guess we'll see if anyone can move forward.
Yeah, warring sides, enemies, as you put it. Can this Parliament actually ever work? Or do you think we could well be heading for new elections?
It's a real challenge. At the moment, we've seen a lot of people in Les Républicains, the centre-right party, rule out any formal alliance or anything of the sort. Although, as I said, there have been some of those kind of, I guess you say, ground-level moves by elected officials to push and call for some support. At the moment, it looks like Macron will limp forward, will try to cobble together things. Elizabeth Borne is going to be, really working for every vote. There will be some big surprises to come as this Parliament plays out. Of course, people suspect there is the possibility that we could look about, next year sometime. There may well be another election for that very reason. It doesn't look like there's an easy route out of this, unless somebody budges. But the one thing we know is nobody wants to budge in Parliament.
You mentioned the NUPES, the left coalition. What about the right? Because they are effectively now, aren't they, the second biggest party, the main opposition?
Yeah, that's a real challenge, and that's one of the big things. Actually, this is one of the reasons this motion of censure is quite a challenge today, because on the one hand, of course, NUPES were elected and on a basis of opposing Macronism, of opposing Macron as a person, and so of course they have to bring this. It's part of their platform. But by the same token, what it does is it makes them look like the source of immobility, and it allows the far right, the Rassemblement National, to kind of stand back and say, oh well, we're part of a constructive opposition, and helps normalise their discourse even further. And that's a real challenge. It really, I think this is maybe not the best look for NUP, because it's not going to go anywhere. It's more parliamentary stunts. And what it allows the Rassemblement National to do is to continue to say, well, we're part of Parliament, we're playing a role, we're helping to govern. And that's even more visible with these new roles, the vice presidencies on committees, the idea that they're playing this fundamental role. So it's a real challenge to come, but part of this kind of static blockage, I think, that we're likely to see of these three extremes kind of pushing against each other, left, right, and the kind of centre right as well, all meeting at loggerheads on a weekly basis in the National Assembly.
Lots of explosions to come. Andrew, thank you very much for coming in. Good to have you in the studio
Thank you.
for once, not down a line, from Chichester University in the UK.